See, again, the last time you ever got money was because you gave something for it in advance. All right, that's it. Yeah. So if you're chasing money, you're chasing the shadow. You're chasing the effect. In other words, yeah, if you want to go to the gym and you see a load of weights, you say, "Wow, that looks really great. Give me the strength. I'll go lift the weights." Well, that doesn't work that way.
Hello Sales Nation, I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman Podcast, and welcome to today's episode. On today's show, we have one of my favorite guests of all time, the legend that is Peter Sage. He's a multiple-time entrepreneur and a business coach, and I'm asking him what if and how our beliefs about money, about cash, have an effect on our ability to sell, close deals, and just do business in general. You can find out more about Peter over at petersage.com. And with that all said, let's jump into today's show. Hey Peter, and welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Absolute pleasure to be here, Will. Great to see you again.
I'm glad to have you back on, mate. So I'll probably link about this and talk about it more in the show notes of this episode as well. But I interviewed Peter a couple of years ago, and this is the follow-up episode, and something crazy's happened in the meantime. And I want to talk today, Peter, about the kind of mindset that people have about money, the mindset that salespeople specifically have about adding value, because it's almost a weird term in itself that's cliche. And I've had many sales managers over the year just shout down the phone at me when things aren't going well, just add more value. You ask them what that means and they don't have an answer to it. But to add just a bit of context, I spoke to you 2 years ago, Peter, and you told me in the podcast, if I wanted to have more success at that point in time, and clearly from the conversation it had context, you told me to add more value and stop chasing money. And at the time, I kind of understood what you said. It makes sense. At the time, it sounded a bit hippie to me when I was just starting my first business and I was in it to make money and have success from just the financial perspective of things. And before we get into everything else we're going to dive into, is that a usual response that you get from people when they first learn this kind of concept of adding value up front and allowing the rewards of that to come later on?
The usual response is that people will intellectualize what I say, because that's the first level of understanding. The challenge is it's always overlaid on top of a whole series of conditioning, previous beliefs, patterns, and behaviors that usually it takes a while before what we call the penny drops. and then as people say, oh, wow, now I know what he really meant, because they have an emotional connection to it rather than just an intellectual connection to it. So, learning something really for many people is, it's intellectual wheel spinning. Because you're not really going anywhere. And as I always say to people, knowing and not doing is the same as not knowing. So you may think that you know it, but unless you're actually living it and it means something to you, then most people will usually discount it. So, and we see that throughout the ages from some of the great avatars of history. But yeah, generally speaking, if I say to people, focus on adding value and not chasing money, they kind of, they get it in a way, but because most of them are driven by scarcity, not abundance, it's a case of focusing on, oh no, but I need money because fill in the blank. And there's a lot of blanks there that we could drill down into, many of which are completely false and built on foundations that'll keep them on a hamster wheel to nowhere for the next 20 years.
That is something else you said to me, being on a hamster wheel. And that's something that really resonated with me at the time. So we'll come on to all this. You've just thrown a lot at me there. This idea of scarcity is something that plagues salespeople, having an abundance mindset. Clearly, just from the very scratching the surface of that, if your prospect that you're dealing with senses that you're only after their money or senses that you're desperate, that immediately ruins the sale a lot of the times, and people don't realize that this is happening. So we'll get on to all that. But I want to just use the Salesman Podcast and the Sales School, which you just launched, as a quick example, just to give the audience context, because they like hearing when I've screwed up and hopefully when I've learned from my lessons as well. About a year ago, I tried to launch, I call it the Sales School, but it's something totally different. No one cared. 2 or 3 people signed up, and it was a complete failure. The only difference between that launch and this launch is that I've put out 200 podcast episodes. I've recorded nearly 250 or so now, and I've just given, and obviously they're free, they're giving value, and the way that I judge the amount of value that I'm giving out and how well we're doing is by how many emails I get a day from people saying, thank you for the content. So that went from 0 a year ago when I was half-arsing the show to now I get 10, 20 emails a day from new listeners, from people who've been listening for a while, people who are just excited about shows like this where we get into the mindset side of things especially. I get these emails, and clearly these are the people that have bought it into the podcast, into the sales school, and this is why, and I don't mind sharing the numbers, in the past 12, 15 hours, we've turned over, or we've had about $20,000 worth of business from it. So that's, over 100 people have signed up to it at this point in the first kind of launch period, which is really exciting for me. So
well done.
Cheers, I wasn't saying this to stroke my own ego, but I like giving the audience a bit of the workings of what's going on in the background of things. So with all this said, I intellectualize what you said, and then now I understand it on an emotional level, but there was no process in place other than just time and experiments and failures that led me to this conclusion after you'd very succinctly and poetically told me what I needed to do. There was a huge gap between me understanding it or listening to it and then understanding it and put it in place. There's so many cliches out there we talk about all the time of sale. For example, the one I use constantly is that for someone to buy from you, they've got to know, like, and trust you. How do we go from intellectualizing something to knowing it on an emotional level and implementing it without a 2-year period in between? Is that possible, or is time part of this as well?
No, it's definitely possible. There has to be some level of time because you have to own it. But a lot of people are in the slow learning group when it comes to things like that, as I've been in many aspects of my life. And so I've made it a mission to look at what has to happen to be able to shortcut that. The buzzword obviously being hack. Mm-hmm. And so for me, when it comes to money, and I remember we had a great conversation, and that was kind of a throwaway deal that I threw in there that now makes sense 2 years in retrospect, when you actually think, oh wow, yeah, now I know. But remember what I said at the beginning, we're overlaying that on the top of a lifetime of habitual thinking. Many people would like to do things out of reason, but they don't. A lot of what we do out of emotion. But a vast majority of everything we do out of habit. And our thoughts are the most habitual aspect of who we are and what we do. Every behavior that you engage in is preceded by a thought. So if you have habits of behavior you try to break, or language patterns you try to break, or whatever it may be, most people try to break the behavior, but they still have the same thoughts that are driving them. They don't work on changing their thinking process. And that's where a lot of people fall down. So if you've grown up thinking that money is a thing, that it is an item, it is something to have, to get, then I got news for you. You're going to chase your tail for the next 20 years until you change your mind. Now, it may sound esoteric, so let's drill down. Because the only place in the universe that money means anything conceptually is in the mind of a human. Nothing else keeps track of it. To everything else, it's pieces of paper with dead people printed on it. It's shiny metal and hard rocks. That's it. We give it meaning. And so understand, where did money come from? The concept of money. Well, very simple. You go back several thousand years, we had a system in place, began with B, called bartering. And which means if you had a load of goats and I had chickens, and guess what? I wanted goats and you wanted chickens, dude, we're in business. But if all of a sudden I wanted goats but you didn't want chickens, we've got a challenge. So money, in terms of a concept, was invented as a universal medium of exchange to solve the goat and chicken problem. That's it. And so when you look at it as for what it is a medium of exchange, arbitrary medium of exchange, used to measure one thing. And this is where salespeople need to listen and where we talk about adding value. It is used to measure perceived value, not actual value, because actual value is subjective. How do I know that? Take a house. A house in London today probably costs more than it did 25 years ago, but it's the same house. In fact, if anything, it should be cheaper because the bricks have worn out. They're in less good shape. But no, it's more expensive. Why? Well, supply and demand, perception. The market conditions, perception. So it's perceived value. I think that house is worth X. Well, it's only worth what somebody perceives it's worth, which is willing to pay for it. So money is an arbitrary medium of exchange used to measure perceived value. Now, if you want money, that means that you have to add something of perceived value for it first, not second. First. It could be a product, a service, or 40 hours a week at a job. Doesn't matter.
Let me just jump in here, and I don't want to take you off your tracks, but I think it's important to emphasize this value first approach, because again, it's something that you can listen to and you go, that makes sense. And then you can go away and go, well, I'm not going to help this customer out because they've not ordered from me for a little while. And again, you get into a weird rabbit hole there.
See, again, the last time you ever got money was because you gave something for it in advance. Right, that's it. Yeah. So if you're chasing money, you're chasing the shadow. You're chasing the effect. In other words, if you want to go to the gym and you see a load of weights, you say, wow, that looks really great. Give me the strength, I'll go lift the weights. Well, that doesn't work that way. You go over, you pick up the weights, you do the work, and you get the strength. You add the value, you get the money. Right? Same concept. But if you're chasing strength without lifting weights, it's like chasing money without adding value. It's designed to keep you in a loop. You'll never break out. So, and if you come to judging the relationship between the salesman and the client or the prospect, then there's something very important that good salespeople, outstanding salespeople understand, and those that are getting in the game focused on money don't. And it's evident in the paychecks and the commission checks at the end of the month. Yeah, it's evident in their job satisfaction. It's evident in how hard they have to work to get repeat business. And it's this. If you understand that the arbitrary medium of exchange when it comes to money is governed through a transactional process. Okay, I get that. So if you're looking to engage in a transaction, what, as you quite rightly cliched out earlier, what is the governing factor of that? Very simple. It's relationship based. If somebody knows, likes, and trusts you, they have more ability to want to part with what's important to them, called money, with you, rather than a million other places they could go. Because it used to be that if I had the best product with the best features and benefits, then I'd expect you to buy it. That doesn't work in today's world. Those days are long gone. Today, or it's customer loyalty can change in a commercial break, right, from someone that's been with you for 5 years, because they don't understand, or you don't understand, the power of relationships. Most people still are living in the illusion that we're in the B2B or B2C world. Well, I'm sorry, that's 20th century language on 20th century business principles that have no place in a global economy that's connected instantaneously with so much choice and value. Right now, we're in H to H. Business today is human to human. Case closed. So if you make your prospect or client feel good by adding value, irrespective of whether you feel it's coming back directly or not, then you're setting yourself up to win. But if you're short term and you're looking transactionally focused only, oh, I'll do this for you if you do that for me, and you're looking in a linear fashion, right? I give out, so I expect it to come back. Then you're going to be spinning your wheels. There's a very specific reason for that. Now, when we understand the law of adding value, the law of being able to generate value for other people, it's non-linear. Why? Because it's who you are. It's not what you do. Like behavior is a consequence of thinking. Therefore, adding value is a consequence of who you will show up as, not, oh, I'm going to go and just do this for this person because I am expecting to get a sale. No. That's called being inauthentic. It's called being manipulative. It's called trying to influence the client based upon hidden agendas that serve you, not them.
I don't want to jump in and stop you here. But I also don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole without coming up for breath a little bit here, Peter. Because you said something there that I want to, again, focus on. And that is, and I'm paraphrasing here and I might have got it wrong, so tell me if I have. But you alleged that giving value is essentially as simple as being in a relationship and making another person feel good. So giving this idea of value in sales and how we can add value, a lot of it comes down to, again, transactional approaches, because they're scalable to that a sales manager can tell his team to go and send everyone this report or this industry report or go and do this X thing to add value to customers. Is that, again, the wrong way to look at it? Is it as simple as, if we can, adding value is as simple as making the people that we work with feel good? Can we narrow it down to that?
I'll make it easy. I'll chunk it down. And I teach this as part of the business school that I put together, because I need entrepreneurs to also think like salespeople, because for many of the one-man armies, they are. And running a business and selling products are two different skill sets. So they have to understand quickly what is the fastest way to be able to become a good salesman as an entrepreneur when most of them never had that level of training. So I'll make it very simple. Understanding 3 levels of relationship. The first level of relationship is where you meet my needs. Let's call that level 1. And it's completely egocentric. Babies are great examples of that. Yeah, a baby wakes you up at 2 in the morning because it's hungry. It doesn't care that you haven't slept for 2 nights. It doesn't care you're getting up at 5 a.m. No. All right. Now, we're okay with that because that's what babies do. It's who they are. You don't not love the baby because it wakes you up at 2 in the morning. It may be inconvenient, but you don't not love the baby. It's what babies do because it's all about their needs, and rightly should be, because if it doesn't, they'll die. Now, in business, if you only care about your needs and not your customers, you're not in business. Yeah, so business moves to what I call a level 2 relationship, which is I'll meet your needs if you meet mine. The classic horse trade transactional based relationship. And that's evident everywhere. You give me £1.50 or $2 and I'll give you a Big Mac and fries, whatever it may be. You give me, $700, I'll give you an iPhone 7. It's transactional based. So, and everybody's familiar with that. So if you understand that you're coming from a place of, I'll meet your needs, you'll meet mine, that's where business starts. That's where sales begins. But there's some inherent challenges with that. For a start, we're automatically assuming what our clients' needs are. Most of the time, we impose our model of the world, our projection of what we think their needs are onto them, and then try to convince them that we know what their needs are so they can buy our product that serves their needs. Right? That doesn't wash. Right? So unless you have a huge amount of rapport, and here's a little bonus tip for people, rapport is the critical factor. Harvard studies over and over again, the best salespeople in the world, the average salespeople in the world, there's no difference in the language patterns. There's no difference in the sales closing techniques. There's no difference in each different steps between the sales, from being able to identify needs or handling objections. There's none of that. Everything's the same. The biggest difference is this: who builds the most rapport? Human to human. All right, so, and if 2 people have rapport, the one with the most certainty will generally influence. So if you go in...
Let me just jump in and we'll come on to the third phase of this. But what do you mean by certainty? Because again, this is something that I can see when the audience email me, asking me questions on things, asking my advice. A lot of the time, it's just inner confidence in they clearly aren't feeling that either their product adds the value that it says it does, perhaps, or they don't feel like they're certain they can add the value that they know they can because the good people doing a good job.
Again, let me chunk it down for you and make it easy, right? We've got 2 primary centers in the body. We have a thinking center, where most people live. Don't use it very well, but it's where they live. And we have a feeling center. One is predominantly thought-based, one is predominantly emotion-based. When those 2 are in alignment, you have certainty. When those 2 are out of alignment, you don't have certainty. When you have total conviction in what you do because your mind and your heart are singing from the same hymn sheet, you give off a very different electromagnetic signature that people pick up. Again, go to the classic Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, that every salesperson should have read. If they haven't, go buy it. The brain is a sending and receiving station for the vibration of thought. We now know that at every level of science. So when you are congruent, when your body language, your tonality, your language patterns are all speaking the same thing, and you're not doing this kind of uncertainty dance that a lot of people kind of fidgety work, then there's a disconnect. So but if you're in alignment, your heart and mind are in aligned, boom, you're broadcasting a signal. So when you've got rapport with somebody and you have more certainty, more conviction about what it is that you're saying about that than they have, you will usually influence. Now if you don't have rapport and you try to influence, you'll get into an attack and defend situation and you can kiss any sale goodbye. So rapport, and this is what Harvard has studied, the greatest salespeople in the world were masters of building rapport. Now, can I build rapport with someone if they think that my needs are more important than theirs?
You're going to struggle.
100%. You can't do it. So that it comes back to adding value. So if I'm on a basis where I presume that I know what your needs are, therefore I'm going to tell you what they are, and then I'm going to tell you what stuff I'm going to sell you that's going to help your needs, I'm missing the most important part of the deal, which is to build the relationship, because then if you're convinced that I will not missell you, I will not give you something that doesn't find your needs, and I've taken enough time to find out what your needs are.
And does this, Peter, separate sales and marketing perhaps in the world of business? In the example that's current, the new iPhone, as you mentioned before, doesn't have a headphone jack. People are complaining about it. Apple knows, of course, that people will get over it over time and it'll lead to other improvements. But that is a marketer's way of going about, as an example, going about business. Whereas perhaps a salesperson has got the ability to ask the audience and the prospects what they want, and then they can help customize and deliver it. Is that why salespeople exist even at a fundamental level?
Well, salespeople exist predominantly because up until 20 years ago, there was no other way to really market. Yeah, and you can't substitute pressing flesh, or listening to a human voice on the phone. There's very little that you can certainly at the moment that you can handle with artificial intelligence that can really touch a person in a way that makes their needs feel as if they're being heard and met at the same point. Now, in business, in marketing, and Apple is usually very, very good at this. You substitute that with culture. People trust Apple because Apple have pioneered certain things in a way that made the customers felt as if they were being heard. Now, when it comes to taking out the headphone jack, Apple know where they're going. They know there's going to be resistance to change, but they also know that in order to bring in other features people want, that's something that they're going to have to pioneer. And if you ask the market what it thinks it currently needs, you're going to always be behind the 8 ball. So, in terms of giving what they think they need.
So let's touch on this then, and we're chopping and changing here because there's so much to go at, mate, and I want to milk as much as I can out of your time and energy and expertise and all this. But a question I get asked very often by the audience is, I know my product or service is right for the prospect. It fits all the criteria. It's going to save them time, money, or make their life easier, or whatever. It's going to add the product itself is going to add real value to them, but the prospect themselves doesn't either get it, they don't understand, and clearly this is the responsibility of the salesperson to influence and make it happen so that they can see the end benefits of it. How do we go about doing that from the perspective how you just described then of Apple know what's right for their audience, and they're always a few generations ahead of these devices? How can a salesperson be a few generations ahead and still sell the prospect, which is perhaps still stuck in the last generation of things?
Simple. Education. Most people go out and try to sell their product, right? Big mistake. And we'll come on to a way that I think can transform a lot of people on how they position their product. If we have time on the podcast, I'd love to be able to share that, because I think it'd be very valuable. But when it comes down to a choice, you either sell your product or you educate your prospects into understanding why that product will be more beneficial from them. By telling them why the product's going to solve their needs, you're assuming, and you say, you absolutely know that this will help them. No. Catch yourself. You believe that this will help them. You don't know anything about them until you've actually, unless you're them. Right? So, if you believe this, then your role is to be able to close that gap by asking better questions and educating people around, where their pain points are. How can this help them? Future pacing out why their decision is either based upon a lack of understanding, lack of knowledge, or scarcity, or their uncertainty, and coming from a place of really knowing that this person tries to understand it may not be for them. And being okay with that. I put an old video on YouTube of me, and I've even got blonde highlights. I look about 12. That went up. That was a video called Integrity-Based Selling, and it was really about selling the right products to the right people for the right reasons. And a lot of it had to do with understanding the role of identity, because your identity or your sense of self is the strongest governing factor in your unconscious behavior and decisions. So if you can link a product to something that supports the identity that they either want or aspire to and distracts from it. So for example, if you're a father and this product links you to becoming a better father rather than just teaches you how to, teach your son better homework, then you've got a different sense of approach on how you view that product, because now it's supporting your identity. Or if you have an identity and the product doesn't support it, and they're trying to still sell you on the old outdated features and benefits model that nobody really should be using these days, then you're on an uphill battle. So understanding the role of identity is fairly critical. So I talk about integrity-based selling. So you've got to come from a place of knowing who they are. And if it's not right for them, be okay with that, because they'll trust you about that. They'll trust you that you have their interests at heart, which is really what the level 3 is all about. See, level 2 is I'll meet your needs, you meet mine. The presupposition is I already know what yours are, and therefore I'm going to tell you. Yeah. And if the customer's needs change and you don't, then you're going to have a disconnect, which is why Bill Gates masterfully said, when people say, why does Windows keep coming out with new updates and new this? He says, well, our role is to obsolete our own products before somebody else does, because our customers' needs are always changing. So that's one aspect. But level 3 is different. Level 3 is how do your needs become my needs? How do my needs become your needs? So let's give a quick parallel in a personal relationship. Level 1, baby. My needs are my needs, and I don't care about yours. Feed me. Now, some people unfortunately try that when they're like 22 and dating, and it doesn't really work.
I've had customers that sound like that as well.
And when customers are focused on like, hey, listen, here's my challenge, here's my problem, this is what I need a solution for, right? And if you've got a disconnect, because what they're screaming at is, please come and meet my needs, and if you do, I'll also meet your needs, called a price tag. All right, so level 2 is where we then go, let's say personal relationship. Oh, great, I'll cook dinner, he picks up the kids from school. I don't mind taking care of the kids all day because he comes home and says he loves me. Whatever it is, it's I'll meet your needs, you meet mine. But unconsciously, we're never really aware of what our needs are specifically, and they'll change every year, 5 years. That's why some people say marriage should be a 5-year renewable contract.
I don't know how my girlfriend would see that, Peter.
Well, if somebody's stuck in their own needs, then it kind of needs to be, and you only got to go to the marketplace to see that for many people it is. Right? But if you understand that level 3 is, honey, you want shoes? Like, let's go get you some shoes. Not like, oh, you want shoes? I want a power drill. I'll be in B&Q. You go to Jimmy Choo. So it's understanding that their needs become your needs. Now, in business, that becomes a very different aspect. So I'll give you a quick example, and obviously people on this podcast are dialed in, that they're in the game, that they understand. So let me give you a quick example of how many of my companies in the past have won industry awards against industry giants we couldn't compete with on budget, but we certainly could compete with when it comes to understanding level 3 relationships. So I'll give you 2 quick examples so they can get the idea. So I had a nutraceutical company. I started in the late 90s, sold in the mid 2000s. And we used to sell vitamins, anti-aging nutraceuticals. So we had a woman call up one time and said, do you do anything for bruising? And the girl on the phone, all my girls are trained, level 3, says, asking questions, what seems the matter? Anyway, she's not a customer. She'd been recommended by a friend who was. She'd taken a fall down the stairs, luckily not broken anything, but she bruised all down one side. She's on several prescription medications, as most people are, unfortunately, and didn't want to go to the doctors because thought if she get another tablet, it may contraindicate with the regime she's on. So she's looking for something natural. Didn't know anyone, asked a friend's a client of ours, she calls up. Anyway, we have a product at the time, it's a good product, but it was a little expensive for her. She wasn't quite sure. So my girl on the phone said, hey, listen, here's what I'll do. Let me send you a 7-day supply right now on us. So at least we can get the pain and the swelling down. Then if you'll have a bit more certainty if it's something you want to continue taking or not. And we can have a conversation in a week's time. Takes the name and address. Now, why did she do that? It wasn't just to give her 7 days free supply of tablets, which, it was, and obviously her needs were our needs. So we wanted to meet that. But when the phone went down, it instantly bounced back up to Interflora. So we got a 35-pound bunch of flowers sent over. We went over, we had a drawer in the office full of cards that you could almost pick any occasion for. I mean, if your hamster passed its driving test, we had a card for it.
That would be worth celebration right there.
I don't know if I'd want to be a passenger. But
don't know if you'd fit in.
So, but we get a card, get well soon, hand signed by everybody in the office, and we send it off with the flowers. Now, she calls next day, crying on the phone in tears. I'll never forget what she said. She says, I never expected or received flowers from my best friend, let alone a vitamin company we'd never dealt with before. Now, anyway, she went on to order several products, recommend us to a lot of different people. And there's a very important distinction for people listening here, because I did an audit at the end of the year And that 35-pound bunch of flowers, a card, bit of staff time, let's call it $40. Paid back £3,500. Now, here's the distinction, two of them. One is my finance director or CFO would look at that and never approve it because he's like, well, hang on, how come you're just sending flowers out to people? Because there's no guarantee it's coming straight back. That's level 2 thinking, right? Transactional. Level 3 is different. Level 3 knows if it doesn't come back from her, it'll come back from someone else because that's who we are as a company. That's what we do. That's what's going out. That's the culture we're building. So the key here is this, the difference between level 2 and level 3 when it comes to sales. At 5 o'clock the next day, I'm not standing there thinking, that selfish bitch didn't call. You know, how rude. I sent all these flowers over. That's level 2 right there. And level 2 will put you out of business. Right? Because more companies are waking up to what level 3 is. No, I send the flowers over. It may come back. It may come back from somewhere else. It may come back a year's time if she has another fall. Doesn't matter. If you put yourself out, how can their needs become our needs? I know it's coming back. Now, on that particular occasion, we had $40 to several $1,000s ROI over 12 months and several other customers she recommended. Walk in the park. But that's the difference between somebody knowing that you care about them versus knowing you want to sell them.
I want to go back to perhaps even the first question I asked here, Peter, because I understand all this. The audience will have a better knowledge of everything that we just talked about, and we understand now that it goes a lot deeper than just it going in your head and it working, a lot of the things that we just talked about. But for someone who now understands, who's listening to this show, they're driving to the next meeting and they're going, oh crap, I should probably buy some flowers or something and take it along with me, or whatever it is, because a lot of people listen to this as they're driving around, if they're field reps or if they're commuting on the way to the work in the morning or commuting back in the evenings. Perhaps they listen to it, perhaps again they've intellectualized it, they understand it, they're going, maybe they are just going, I'm just going to send up some flowers, that'll solve this and I'll make more money, which is still the level 2 side of things. Are there any practical ways that we can get to this level 3 way of thinking, in an instant, or, is there anything that we can physically do to make it happen? Or is it a case that we just have to let it simmer, perhaps like what happened to me, and then we have to, consciously practice it the best that we can until it sticks?
Great question. Thank you. And coming back to what I said earlier, it cannot be an act. It can only be a representation of who you are. So if that's the case, the question becomes, are you working on sales or are you working on yourself? Yeah, it's a personal journey. People buy people before they buy their products, ideas, or concepts. Yeah, I'll say that again. People buy people before they buy their products, ideas, and concepts. And we've all got an inbuilt bullshit detector. Yeah, it's another analogy I use. Imagine you had 2 televisions coming out of each ear. Large TVs that actually broadcast in words all of the thoughts that you were thinking that you weren't verbalizing. What would happen when you walked into a sales meeting?
A lot of people would be sent at the door, turned around, or at the reception, turned around, I think.
And it'd be like, oh, this product is absolutely ideal for you, blah, blah, blah. It's perfect, couldn't be a better fit. And on the TV, because I really hope you buy because I need to make my rent on Friday. Or take it to personal context, wow, you're just so amazing. I feel so great when I'm with you, sweetheart. I think we've really got a future together. And like on the screen, for tonight, whatever it may be. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. And this is what everybody that's listening right now wants to pay attention to. What would it be like if that was the way it was? Because that's the way it is. That's the way it is. You think you've got secrets. You think your clients can't pick up on unspoken issues or projections of your energy, of your intentions. We're very scientific about this these days. We understand that. You can walk in now and know. And guys, back me up here. And girls, if you're listening, you'll smile at this, right? If a girl is in a particularly unconnected mood and you walk in from work and you walk into the kitchen, does she have to open her mouth for you to understand that she's in a mood? Right? Not at all. Now, a mood is nothing more than a scream for love, care, attention, validation, and approval, and a level of being respected. But we didn't need a dissertation, and we're not going to get one that's the issue. Right? But we know that before she opens her mouth. Honey, everything okay? I'm fine. We know the drill. right? And again, that's radar time for start stepping up and manning up and treating your lady like she deserves, rather than taking her for granted. But clients are the same. That's the way it is. So who are you working on as yourself in order to be the person that's congruent with what's coming on those televisions as to what's coming out of your mouth? And that isn't a technique you learn in closing school. That isn't the ability to handle rejection. That's not sales skills, telephone skills, time management. None of that. That's who are you when you look in the mirror? What do you stand for? Yeah. When all's said and done, what are your values? And if you work on that as yourself, get mentorship, get a peer group, raise your game, rather than just trying to win a commission spiv on the board at the end of the week. Right? And then you'll start bringing something far more to the table. And oh, look, we're back to adding value.
You've essentially, and I'm going to drill down this a little bit further on another practical question here. But you've essentially just, and I don't think we're there yet, I think we're getting there, and I don't want this to be an advert, but it's essentially what we want to achieve with the sales school. We're not covering how to closing techniques, things like that. We're covering things like how to deal with the fear of selling and things of this nature. That because I'm so happy you said this, because all the questions I get asked are never how do I close more business. It's I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I don't know how to add value, I don't understand these concepts. And so I'm really glad you said that, because as I said, I don't think we're 100% there yet, but that's what I'm aiming towards with the sales school. Other than that, because I don't want it to be an advertisement, are there any books, resources, courses, anything that you would recommend perhaps on this front, so that someone listening to this right now who wants to take action in this moment, they can place an order of a book or sign up for something or get involved, or is there anything real practical that you can advise on this front to improve ourselves so that we can sell better?
Sure. And again, there's two aspects to this. There is what I would call the tradecraft of being a good salesperson. And the tradecraft is your closing skills, your telephone manner, your ability to build rapport, all of the techniques that are required. If you're a pilot, you've got to go to flight school. You've got to understand what the buttons and the levers mean and the different and how to land a plane. If you're going to a surgeon, I don't want a surgeon that rocks up and says, well, I'm pretty confident about doing this, but I've never been to medical school. I'd be out of there like a rabbit up a drain pipe. Right? So the tradecraft is one aspect. But the inner game is always far more powerful. Remember what I said, every behavior is preceded by a thought, and our thoughts are habitual. So if you have an inability to handle rejection, then you're going to have weak closing skills, because you're going to be fearful of knocking on the door or picking up the phone. If you can't understand the difference between concept rejection and personal rejection, because you've never loved yourself enough to validate who you are, and you need it externally, then every time somebody says no to your product, you're going to take it personally because you're carrying the same pattern. Right? This is inner game world. So you get the inner game right, and you can go learn sales techniques and closing skills. I mean, Siri will teach you that these days. I mean, for God's sake, we live in a world now where access to technical information is abundant. In fact, most people are drowning in information, starving for wisdom, but drowning in information. So the inner game is where you want to go. If you want closing skills, if you want to be a good salesman, a book like The Ultimate Sales Machine by my former business partner, the late, great Chet Holmes, is a great book to have. If you want to understand the basics of how to add value over and above, the classic Raving Fans by Ken Blanchard is an absolute must. And any salesperson that hasn't read that just doesn't understand what this conversation has been about. But when it comes to working on the inner game, unfortunately, there are very few resources that people can go to. Why? Because sales managers or sales directors aren't really qualified as good psychologists. And good psychologists don't understand sales. So being able to have, and it's one of the reasons I actually created a program. And again, I don't want to be a blatant bitch, but I'll give you some things to look for if you're going out to the market to try to find somebody that can help you with this, because that I'm more interested in that than being able to share what we do, because it's the criteria that you want to be looking for. Right? For a start, get somebody who's been where you want to go, that knows the game, not somebody that's good at repeating stuff or parroting stuff. Somebody that understands, they've been in the trenches, they know how to swing the bat, they've got the battle scars. They're not talking theory like most bank managers that try to tell you how to run your business. They've never ran a business. Yeah, or, God forbid we go on a religious topic here, but, I never understood why priests are the only people not allowed to have sex. They're the only people qualified in the church to tell you how to have it, right? Yeah, you get the idea. Yeah, and in any other world, the banking church would be schizophrenic in that respect. So, go learn from somebody who's been there, that understands it. Yeah, that understands the inner game, that knows the psychological patterns, knows how to handle, get you over your ability to handle rejection, or the fact you didn't get love from where you thought you should have got it by the time you were 7, and you're still dealing with issues, the fact your brother got a bigger Christmas present when you were 5, whatever it may be. Yeah, surround yourself with a peer group. Who you hang with is who you become. Case closed. Yeah, if you hang around with 10 motivated, high-end people that are working on themselves, that are vulnerable, that are authentic, that are working on their trade craft, that are all about adding value, you will become the 11th. End of story. You hang around with 10 people that are focused on their commission checks, going to drink most of it by Saturday night, talking about how they got this client to do that because you're going to become the 11th, and it's a pretty low-level existence. Yeah. So and you're always going to be wanting other stuff that you're not going to be able to afford. So. Yeah, who you hang with is who you become. So a peer group is great, and get into a program where you can really start to have accountability. Accountability is paramount. Why do we hire a personal trainer? Not to teach us how to do push-ups. It's so that when the alarm goes off at 5 a.m., we get our ass out of bed because there's somebody waiting for us at the gym at 5:30. So accountability is critical. So I have a program called the Elite Mentorship Forum, which launch every 6 months, which helps people on their own personal journey of 6 months to transform and reinvent who they are from the inner game. I don't teach sales skills. I don't even teach business skills, which is more my core competency as a born entrepreneur. But it's the inner game. Why? I don't care if you're a salesman. I don't care if you're an entrepreneur. I don't care if you're a husband, or a wife, or a football coach. Everything that you do is an expression of who you are. So unless you know how to change who you are, which is very easy, when you understand the right way to approach it rather than traditional education, then you're always going to do the same thing. You're going to find new ways, maybe new jobs, new positions in your company, or new opportunities in the marketplace to earn the same amount of money. Yeah, the grass will look greener on the other side. You're still using the same lawnmower. And so unless you change that inner game, it's very hard to go. And you may be on a 2-year journey yourself, and then suddenly one day you'll get it and you'll rise above. Mm. That makes sense?
Makes total sense. And where can we find out more about
that? My website, petersage.com, is probably one of the easiest places to go to, or reinventyourself.io is a place that has a lot of my programs on. The Elite Mentorship Forum is something that, as I say, I'm very proud of. It's very transformational. It's not for everybody, and there's a commitment. So make sure that if you're not willing to put in the time and effort, then don't show up. But it's a great way to spend 6 months, transforming and creating a new peer group of incredible people that'll pay you back, and at many different levels. So there's my little advert for you. But
hey man, if you can't come on a sales podcast and pitch, then where can you?
And again, my role here is to, as I say, be able to add enough value to stop people running down the blind alleys that they spend most of their life running down, thinking there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, only to find out it's a dead end. And no, I just need to improve my sales skills, my closing ratio. I just need to brush up on my product knowledge. No, you don't. A good salesperson is a good salesperson. You need to improve your ability to show up as a person that lives what their talk is. That adds value, that looks first to deliver before they take, that comes from a place of understanding people's needs because they have developed empathy. Now, if you have too much empathy and not enough ego, then you'll be their best friend, but you won't close. If you have too much ego and not enough empathy, then you're going to drive over people and step on them to get the sale. Right? Short-term thinking. So you need to have a balance of that. But most people focus on either too much on one or the other. They want to be your best friend, but they're scared of you saying no, so they never ask for the sale. Or they're a hard-nosed person that knows all the closing techniques and tries to, save money in the bank and realize that it's an uphill battle.
Dude, I'm going to jump in again because I'm running out of time here with you. I'm conscious of that. And I've got one final question that I ask everyone that comes on the show. I could continue this conversation, Peter, for another 3 or 4 hours. Makes it so fascinating. I know the audience are getting a lot of value out of this. And we'll have you back on in the future to follow up as well, I'm sure, because I know I'm going to get inundated with questions following this one. But the question I ask everyone, mate, is if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help them become better at sales?
Better at sales.
Specifically.
Again, it's what everyone wants the one thing, right? There's no one. Everyone says, what's the best instrument in the orchestra? There isn't. It's a harmony. It's a symphony. But if I could go back to my younger self, I'm not a sales guy. I'm a business guy. But nothing happens in business unless something is sold. So business guys have to understand the psychology around selling. So if I was to go back to my younger self, I would say, again, focus on the relationship. Build strong, long-level relationships. Don't look short-term. Don't go for the kill. When you can. Don't kill the goose. That's laying the golden eggs. Start collecting the eggs. It's the long-term game, and people that play that from authenticity and sincerity rather than their own insecurities of scarcity and thinking I've got to get money for Friday. Will be the people that always win over time.
Love it. We didn't even get into, I wrote down here to dive into scarcity and abundance. We didn't even scratch the surface of that. So that could be a topic for a future show, Peter. I appreciate your time, mate. I appreciate all your insights. We'll link to everything that you mentioned with what you do in the show notes. We'll link to the books in the show notes to this episode as well. And with that, mate, I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
Pleasure's absolute mine. Love what you're doing, my friend. You're adding a ton of value. Keep giving your gift.